Oops. I've got 5 o'clock, so I think.
Go.
All right, we are at our council special meeting called for today. Thank you everybody for attending. We have everyone in attendance today. Councillor Kleiber's unable to attend. We have Councillor Link from Ward 1, Councillor Bersetti from Ward 2, Councillor Prague from Ward 4. Our CAO, Brent Alnick, is here. We have RM of West St. Paul is our Municipal Legislative Officer, Ms. Shaw, and our Red River Planner, Mr. Eno, is joining us today as well. Thank you for being in attendance. Welcome, Councillor Kleiber. Perfect timing, we're just about to get started. I will read the resolution now to call our meeting to order. Be it resolved that the meeting be called to order and that the agenda for the meeting be adopted as circulated. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Link, seconded Councillor Prague. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Mr. Planner, then, before we begin, I will turn it over to you to remind Council of where we've been on this application and where we are now, and the resolution that we have before us tonight.
Of course, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. So I'll walk you through the first item on your agenda, which is zoning bylaw amendment 2021-07P. And I'm sure, as you're quite well aware, this is the old St. Benedict's site that's slated for rezoning to allow for a new residential neighborhood. Specifically, the applicant was proposing to rezone the property to an RS and an RFM1 multifamily zone. There's the properties that we're talking about outlined in black. And there was the original proposal that the applicant had put forth. Since council's second reading, there was, of course, an appeal hearing that was held by the Red River Planning District Board. And they made a decision on this at their meeting last week. So on the screen in front of you is just a screenshot of the actual board order. Essentially what they were doing was confirming that the bylaw should be approved, but with the exception of the multifamily portion. So that screen was a bunch of legalese. Really, what does this all mean? Just what I said there, that the zoning bylaw amendment should be approved with the exception of the land proposed for the multifamily zone, which is that smaller portion located right against the Red River. This was approved by all 11 members of the board. And there's just a map just showing you essentially what the board decided, just with a very simple graphic there of the X out of what they said should not go forward. That's all I have for this, Madam Chair. So in front of you, you have the, I believe, a council resolution that you can give this third reading, with the exception of that one portion that was X'd out. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Eno. I will go around our virtual council table here and see if there are any questions for you. Councillor Link, any questions for Mr. Eno?
Yes, I have a couple of questions for Mr. Eno. I am looking at the third page of the memo to our council and the recommendations in accordance with the board resolution. West St. Paul alters the bylaw by removing the portion of land proposed for RMF1 zone, step 1, and then proceed with third reading of zoning bylaw amendment. I'm looking at the words "and then." To me, this implies two resolutions. A first resolution to follow the Red River Planning Board Resolution 2021-146. And the next one to give third reading, or a combination of those two in one resolution. Am I interpreting this correctly or not?
It can all be done in one step in one resolution with council.
All right, should there be acknowledgement that about the Red River Planning Board order in the
I'm
resolution?
sorry. Oh, in the resolution? There doesn't
Yes.
have to be.
Would that be not more transparent and explain how the amendment to the zoning bylaw amendment came about?
I'm not sure if it's 100% necessary. You have the board order as part of your package, and that gives you the paper trail of how things all came to be. You wouldn't be able to give this third reading without that order from the board.
Mr. Eno, I emailed you today asking for the resolution with the board order, and we see it in your introduction, but we do not see it in your memo to the council. Today on the screen was the first time I've seen the resolution. Just a comment. We hadn't seen the resolution to weigh it with the Red River Planning Board resolution, to look at ours in comparison, is what I'm saying, until just a few minutes ago.
I guess back to the mayor, I could always put that back on the screen if you want. Yeah.
May I have a copy of that sent, or a copy sent to the whole council that gets forwarded to us?
A copy of the board order?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Is that possible?
Yes, I'm sure that's possible.
Thank you.
That would come from Red River Planning. So Mr. Eno, could that be sent from either yourself or Ms. Ferguson?
Yep, a copy has been sent off to the RM for your records.
Thank you.
Okay, so then
Oops.
section 77 brackets 9 has been complied with in the Planning Act.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Link?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paccetti, any questions for Mr. Eno?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kleiber, any questions for Mr. Eno?
Are we discussing the application as a whole right now, or just the amendment? Because council hasn't discussed the application after the public hearing, so.
Just if there's questions for Mr. Eno, and then we'll read the resolution on the rezoning, and then council can discuss before we take a vote.
Mr. Eno, under the Planning Act, it says that any alteration to a bylaw requires a second public hearing. And I believe we had a meeting with you where you also indicated that. Why is that now being circumvented?
It's not being circumvented. That section that you're referring to is actions that council would take after you have a public hearing. A board order is a different section of the Planning Act altogether.
Well, I'm referring to 46.2 and 74.2, which says after the public hearing, the board or council proposes to alter the bylaw, a second public hearing must be held in accordance with subsection 1 to receive representation on the alterations. So are you saying to me that it's up to us to do a second public hearing?
No, that section doesn't apply at this point in time
Why does it not apply?
because you're past that point in the process.
says after the public hearing.
What you're doing now is making a decision on third reading after the board has made an order.
Okay, so where in the act does it say that we don't have to do an alteration, we can just accept a board order? We don't have to have a public hearing. Where is that in the act?
Section 77.6.
Okay, let me go there. And what does it say?
Says that you can give a third reading if you comply with the board's order.
Okay, I'm almost there, 77.6. Okay, well, I don't see 77.6. Okay, come back around to me. I'm gonna look this up. Thank you.
I think it was 76.6.
Don't look like it. Okay, I'll have a look. Thank you.
We can give you a few minutes, Councillor Kleiber, if you need some time to look that up. We can take a moment and wait. That's no problem.
We don't want to keep coming back and forth.
Okay, I see it now. And it says it complies with the municipal board or the board of planning under 8B. Yeah, I don't really see what you're saying here, because it says if the board or council refers an objection, it must not be giving a third reading. Then the planning board makes an order under the clause confirming the section, the parts of the bylaw that were the subject of the objection, or it complies with the order of the board or board of the planning district under clause 8B. So 8B says directing the board or council to alter the bylaw in the manner it specifies to address any representation on the objection made at the hearing. So are you saying that, what is the objection that was made at the hearing?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, I'm going to the sections that you directed me to, and it says that the board or council can alter the bylaw. It specifies to address any representations on the objection made at the hearing. So what was the objection made at the hearing?
Those would be objections made by people who presented at the hearing.
Okay, so there was no objection to the RMF1 then?
At the appeal hearings, yes, there were objections to the RMF1.
Okay, so you have individuals who came forward and said they were against RMF1, and that's why we're altering it? Or is it because council put that forward?
This is the order that the board has given.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kleiber. Councillor Pereg, any questions for Mr. Eno?
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Eno.
Thank you. No questions from me as well. Thank you, Mr. Eno. It's good to go through. This has been a lengthy process that started in January or February. So it's good to remind council with your memo that you included in the package and your PowerPoint of where this application started and where we're at now. So I appreciate that background information for all of us. I will read the resolution and then council will have an opportunity to discuss. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 2021-7P, being a bylaw of the Rural Municipality of West St. Paul to rezone the subject lands to RS serviced residential, be read a third and final time, signed, sealed, and therefore passed as a bylaw of the Rural Municipality of West St. Paul. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Counselor Brusetti, seconded Counselor Pereg, and I will go around the table for each of us to have an opportunity to speak to this matter. Counselor Brusetti, I'll start with you. Any comments for discussion?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Kleiber, any comments for discussion?
Yes, I have quite a few comments. I actually watched the appeal hearing meeting. And we as counselors are elected to represent our residents. We're out there to look after their best interests. And Mr. Eno indicated at that appeal hearing there was 250 emails in opposition to this bylaw. And that's substantial for me. You know, rule of thumb in customer service is times that by 10 and you've got 2,500 people that are angry. And that's almost half of West St. Paul. I don't believe this bylaw, this zoning and the subsequent subdivision fits are the existing that's in the area. Everything is RG. Lister Rapids, Rivercrest, everything's RG. And here we are putting in high density housing. I don't think it's appropriate at all. There was references made to the fact that the signs were not posted in the required times. I don't know if that's true. Maybe Mr. Eno can comment on that later. There was a comment made that River Springs Drive was promised a paved emergency exit. That's now been removed. I'd like some comment on that. I do recall that, but it seems to have been removed now. There was also a comment made by a resident that said if the developer would work with residents, then there wouldn't be any appeal. And I agree with him, because if we're really listening to our people, then we're not going to have 250 letters come in that they're against something. The other thing that came to light at this meeting was a letter that was sent out by you, Mayor Christian. And I was not aware of this letter. You were questioned on it. Apparently came out from the three of you, Councillor Pereg, Councillor Bichetti, and yourself. You never informed myself or Councillor Link. The information was suppressed from us. But you promised with two councillors that there would be no multifamily in the east. And when we did the first phase of Sonova Center, you would not give any indication as to whether you were for or against that application. In fact, I recall being in the back room and you were saying that we were a quasi-judicial council and we couldn't commit to anything. And yet this letter comes out saying, you know, we're not going to have multifamily housing in the area of east of St. Benedict's. And now here we are doing an amendment to actually meet that letter. So to me, that is a commitment to a vote. You've committed to a vote that you're going to do this, and now we've moved heaven and earth to do so. And that is really concerning to me, because we're not supposed to be doing this. According to that McCandless document, according to Planning Act, we're not supposed to be committing to anything, and yet this letter goes out without our knowledge, and using RM letterhead, using RM resources, the taxpayers' money to represent three of you. And when you were asked at the appeal hearing about that, you didn't answer it. You just went on about how we had all this open engagement, but that isn't answering the question. I don't know why Councillor Link and I are being cut out again, but we were. And why are we meeting with developers and making promises? I don't understand why that's happening. So to me, that's a misuse of taxpayer money, because it's your own personal agenda that you're doing. It's not unity on council, and it certainly wasn't transparency to myself and Councillor Link. It's also against the procedures of the Planning Act when you commit yourself to a vote on paper to residents. When I had a list of businesses that were all in the same spot on a variance, you told me I broke the Planning Act because I suppressed the information, but here you've suppressed the information. So I guess what I'm expecting from you is to recuse yourself the way that I did. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's what should happen. based on what you told me, why wasn't this letter divulged to Councillor Link and I in the first and second reading? Why do we not have knowledge of it? Why wasn't it sent to all of us? I don't understand. That should have been done. I would like an explanation. Why aren't we listening to residents? If we can go and move and do an entire amendment to remove RMF1, but we can't change the lot frontage for people to 60 feet because that's what they want, why do we listen for one thing but not the other? Obviously, there's the will of the three of you to do something when you choose to, because you've sent out this letter and we've moved heaven and earth for it. But now when the residents want lower density, it's not happening. So I'm really disappointed in what's happened here with the three of you, that you withheld this information from us. I don't think it's right. It's a right thing to do. And I don't think it's in keeping with the Planning Act either.
Thank you, Councillor Kleiber. I'm going to refer to our planner to follow up on a couple of questions. One of them that came from Councillor Kleiber's discussion, can we confirm that the public hearings that were held in West St. Paul as part of this application, 2 of them over 9.5 hours, and the appeal hearing that was held in Red River Planning were advertised correctly by Red River Planning?
Yes, the advertising requirements both met and exceeded the Planning Act.
Thank you. I think that's important to know. We all want to make sure that we're following proper process. The other issue raised by Councillor Kleiber, can council force a developer to change the lot size? So that if, to quote Councillor Kleiber, if heaven and earth has been moved to remove the multifamily from this bylaw, that we could simply force a developer to change the lot size. Is that possible, Mr. Eno?
When somebody submits an application, you have to deal with it as it's been presented. I think you're referring to the subdivision, really. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting to me is that we can send out letters for the multifamily. Was there no will for the three of you to have will to make the lot sizes bigger? We could also reject it. And when you have 130 people at a meeting and 250 in appeal, I think it's pretty clear what the people want. And I know for myself, they elected me and I represent them.
Thank you for sharing your opinion, Councillor Kleiber. Councillor Busetti, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
If I may comment a couple of those things, because the three of us are being brought into this. That letter was brought up in the public hearing during the second reading. You can nod your head, it was in one of the residents' replies back to council. I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you.
Councillor Kleiber, one at a time, please. It's Councillor
I didn't
Busetti.
jump into you. Okay, the next thing is, our choices when we're making these decisions are not to change the bylaw. It's to accept it, to deny it, or just to accept it in part. Well, there was 2 parts to this. There was the RMF1 part and there was the RS zoning. So again, as it was brought up in the appeal, there was 3 choices that council can make. We can't change their application. We can only change parts of the bylaw to split it up. And regarding the letter and all us talking to residents, that was between the public consultation prior to any applications being brought out, that myself and Councillor Prague, who are the ward boundaries to that area, were getting numerous emails, and along with the mayor, went and we talked to residents and basically doing our job, referring it back to the developer saying, hey, this is what we're hearing. You're going to have problems. And that's the point where we're supposed to be doing it. So you can talk all you want about it, we were actually doing our job at that time. And instead of sending one email out, it was sent out as a mass to all the residents that were putting the complaints in. That was just to clarify some of the comments about moving heaven and earth. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Bichetti,
Thank you,
why?
Councillor Brusetti.
Councillor
Councillor Kleiber, are you wanting to speak to the item again?
Yes, I am.
Okay, through the chair, please. Thank you.
Councillor Bichetti, why did you not inform Councillor Link and I of this letter? It clearly states here that multifamily is not part of the plan for this area east of St. Benedict. So if you went to the developer and you had a little chat with him, why was it still part of the application? Like, clearly you made a commitment here. And you didn't let us know. The mayor didn't let us know. You didn't let us know. This is dated February 2021. When was the public hearing? May, June, July, August? We have all these dates. And nobody on this council let Councillor Link and I know that this letter had gone out. Why not? Aren't we transparent? Doesn't seem that we are.
Can I reply back
Go
to
ahead,
that?
Councillor Brusetti.
Since the emails came to myself, oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
You're on mute, Councillor Brusetti.
Can you hear me? Okay. Since the emails that came out and with the complaints or the against the development came to myself, Councillor Parag, and the mayor, there's other stuff that I'm sure is going on in your ward and Councillor Link's ward that I'm sure myself and Councillor Parag don't know about. So there is stuff that goes on in different wards that doesn't come to all of us. That's the only thing I'm going to say about it. The only reasoning I can say that.
Thank you, Councillor Brusetti. Go ahead, Councillor Kleiber.
I don't send out letters on RM letterhead using RM money for my viewpoints. If I want to communicate with people, I'll communicate, but it'll be on my dime and it certainly won't be representing the RM. And before I would send any letter out like this, I would have to have it checked by council and let you know that I'm doing something like that. And is it okay? We've had code of conducts about process. And now you're saying, well, it's okay that I did that because yeah, it was before the hearing, but you made a commitment to remove this RMF in this letter. And now it's happening. So it's a commitment to a vote. It is not just, oh, we're going to do this or that. It's a commitment to a vote. And that's where I have concerns of this process. Now, I don't think we're going to get anywhere here as far as what your opinion is or my opinion is. Let it just be said that if you guys are going to send out letters like this, you should at least let us know. That would be the transparent and respectable thing to do for two councillors that were not included on here.
Thank you, Councillor Kleiber, for sharing your input. I would just say that I would send that letter again and do the same thing and the same process the way that we did. It was done correctly. It followed process. There was no open application. All of us had the opportunity, and I believe all of us did attend the open houses that were held by the developer and listened along with residents. Prior to an application being pulled, I asked the developer, have you received any feedback from council members advocating or sharing information because there is no open application? And the developer said he had not received anything and any information other than from Councillor Brusetti and Councillor Parag and myself. And so when residents in their wards and residents to me are expressing concerns, and we are all asked for input by the developer, we shared that input. Residents are not happy with a suggestion of multifamily. The developer also suggested that west of St. Benedict's, there would be no multifamily proposal based on what he heard. So a letter went out because Councillor Brusetti, Councillor Parag, and myself were inundated with emails of misinformation. So the correction was This is what's being proposed. So far, this is what the plan contains. If you want additional information, please go on to the developer's website and engage with the developer and share your input before an application is submitted, because the design details are in the works. As Councillor Bussetti mentioned, ward councillors are sending emails back and forth to their residents. We don't see any of those emails. I fully respect that, that you work with your residents and engage with them. I commend Councillor Prague and Councillor Bussetti for wanting to have a consistent message to reach out and have open communication with our residents about this issue, to quash rumors that weren't true, and to ask residents to please engage with the developer and take advantage of every opportunity that they had to have a say in what the design of the subdivision looked like and what was being proposed for rezoning. So we've been elected to represent our residents. I won't apologize for that. I won't apologize for that letter. And that was sent out for the ward councillors and myself. Those are areas that you are not ward councillors for. And you know, it's great. We've all had information on the public hearings and the process going forward and input on that. So I won't apologize for advocating on behalf of my residents who've made it very clear their concerns about multifamily. And I won't apologize for putting them in contact with developers so that they can have their say. It would do the same thing again. Councillor Kleiber, go ahead.
What you should apologize for is keeping that information from us and sending it out to the entire community without our knowledge. I mean, I understand you want to represent your views, but you have a responsibility to at least let us know what you're doing. And that, you know, the letter like this goes out and becomes part of a public hearing and we're blindsided. I don't think that's appropriate, but that's what you've done. And you know what? You told us that we were not to say anything during those public consultations, during those open houses. We were not allowed to speak. I would have liked to have given my input, but we were told by you we could not speak during those meetings. And we were told by the developer when we got into those meetings that we would not be speaking. And we all agreed to that. And so now we're finding out that we followed that, but it was not necessarily followed by other people. I mean, you want to be transparent and let us know what's going on. That's the only thing that we're asking here. And if you choose not to, you choose not to. That's your.
Thank you, Councillor Kleiber. I obviously disagree with comments that you're making in terms of being told not to speak and not have input and not advocate on behalf of your residents. That's your job. That's up to you. And in terms of that letter going out in the process that we followed, again, I stand behind that and I would advocate for residents. That's what we're elected to do. We've all had an opportunity. Councillor Prague, any comments? I just have a few comments. Everybody go ahead, Councillor Link.
We're discussing the resolution now, correct? I have not had my turn at discussing the resolution.
I apologize, Councillor Link. Go ahead.
No problem. Well, I would like to discuss the resolution, but before I do that, I have to confirm that I'm positive that I can find an email with instructions about observing the open houses and not giving an opinion. Opinions and feedback were to be sought and given by residents, not the councillors. I have an email to that effect. If you wish, I will try and find it.
Councillor Link, just to clarify, none of us spoke at the public hearing or at the open houses. Councillor Prague, Councillor Bussetti, Councillor Kleiber, yourself, myself, none of us spoke at the public hearing. The information though to submit and the web page available for anyone to submit concerns about the application is open to everyone. You're also able to receive emails from residents regarding the open houses. There's no open application at that time. So not a single member of council spoke. The idea is to give residents that opportunity to speak.
Yes.
You would have been free to speak, no one's stopping you. But I think it would have been unfair to our residents to take their time that they have to share their feedback and hear council concerns, because those open houses were about them. But if you received a bunch of emails from residents following the open house, I would hope that you would forward those on to the developer when they were working on the design. I would hope that you would advocate for them before there's an open application. Or send them
thank-
to
thank you,
Councillor
Mayor.
Russetti or Councillor Pereg, the area councillors for the wards.
Thank you, Mayor, for elaborating on your previous instructions to council. Okay, now I have a couple of comments about the resolution. Now, the bylaw that we are giving third reading to, that we are approving, is not the same wording as received, say, in the second reading or the first. The wording's different, okay? The RM of West St. Paul has been ordered by Red River Planning District to amend the bylaw to follow the order. So I think the resolution wording should be expanded to reflect that order. A whereas clause could be added, something like, I'm not going to wordsmith, the MLO is quite capable. Something like the Red River Planning Board has approved resolution to alter zoning bylaw amendment 2021, whatever the correct label is, by removing the portion of land proposed for RMF1, giving the property roll number, and therefore, and the resolution could be the same as it is, but I think it would benefit from a whereas clause so that it's very clear that we are amending the bylaw zoning, the zoning bylaw amendment, then specifically how and why. I believe it's more transparent. And if I'm the only one that think that way, well, that's just fine. That's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Link. Sorry, I will go around and see if there are, I have a mover and a seconder on that resolution. And Ms. Shaw, maybe you could remind me who the mover and seconder are on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Resolution was moved by Councillor Russetti and seconded by Councillor Craig.
Thank you. Councillor Russetti, would you accept the amendments to the resolution proposed by Councillor Link?
I'm fine with it the way it's written. Thank you.
And Councillor Pereg?
I'm fine with the way it is.
Thank you. Any further comment, Councillor Link?
No further comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We've all had an opportunity to discuss. My comments on the rezoning, this has been a long process, and these are difficult decisions for council to make. It's a big change in our community in an area that's been a field and some trees, and I can understand the concern and the impact that this has. Many things are considered in the decision that council makes, the legal requirements, whether this meets them, and our planner has said it has, and we have his recommendation that it does meet the requirements of our development plan, a development plan that went to the public and had public hearings on its own. Our planner suggests also it meets the requirements of our secondary plan and our West St. Paul zoning bylaw. When people discuss public consultation and has there been enough public feedback on this, and 200 emails and the concerns that residents have raised about rezoning and subdivision, I agree. We have to listen to residents. We have to listen to what's best for the community now and in the future. Have we had public consultation and opportunities for residents to be heard? Our developers provided 4 open houses for this, for residents to speak. 2 prior to a concept plan being made and 2 after. A website was created for residents to provide additional information and concerns on the design concept. There were 2 public hearings held, 9.5 hours over 2 nights in West St. Paul, 5.5 hours at an appeal hearing. But even broader than that, this has been something that's been in the works for 100 years. We had 2 development plans. Each of those development plans had public hearings. The settlement center designation of this area dates back decades. So opportunities and residents in attendance at the approval of those development plans. And open houses, at least 2 open houses for each development plan that was reviewed and amended and sent to the province, reviewed by the minister and stamped and approved by the minister. So open houses and public engagement opportunities for that. There was open houses and public engagement for the secondary plan that was approved in 2011. Open houses at St. Benedict's, ironically, public hearing and input from our residents for that. So to get to the point that we're at today on a rezoning doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes out of decades of work. And by my count, at least 12 opportunities of open houses and public hearings for hundreds of residents who attended and had input, all leading up to getting us to this point of rezoning. In terms of sending to different agencies and different levels of government have been consulted, all supportive, including Manitoba Municipal Relations, Manitoba Infrastructure, Agriculture, the Seven Oaks School Division, all having input and all supporting what's happening here. We heard from residents and we were listening. We heard residents tell us no multifamily, and the ward councillors, Councillor Brussetti and Councillor Prague, advocated strongly on their behalf. Councillor Brussetti put forth and moved the motion to remove the multifamily that was initially proposed. And that was supported by the majority of council. 3 members of council supported that resolution and 2 opposed. We were listening to the residents and the concerns that they brought forward. In terms of zoning, this area and this zoning allows any size lots. We have a subdivision plan that we'll be voting on, but to request service lots in this area has been something we have letters from the minister dating back over 10 years for. To have this area serviced by sewer and water has always been the plan. So the zoning should not be contested. Having our residents hook up to sewer, hook up to water, that's what this area has been intended for. The subdivision people can have comments and concerns about what exactly the plan looks like, but everyone should be agreement that lots in this area should be serviced, fully serviced by wastewater and water to protect our river, to protect the lake, to access the infrastructure that has been millions of dollars to bring into our community, and for the developer to tap into to create that infrastructure. So we have been listening to the residents. This area will be strictly single family. I'm proud of the process that's taken place over decades. And I'm proud that council has been able to, council members have advocated for their residents. And that is my input on this. Everyone's had an opportunity to share concerns. I have the resolution and a mover and a seconder, and I will call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Mr. Eno, I'm going to turn it back over to you to discuss the subdivision of where we've been and how we got to where we are before reading the very long resolution for this one.
Of course, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen again, just so I can remind council of the layout of the subdivision. Can everyone see that? Yep, I'm seeing some heads nod. So the subdivision, as you're quite aware, is the same properties located both north and south of Masters Avenue and east of Main Street, and it's going to create a new single-family neighborhood, 185 lots, with some new public roads and public reserves. It has been suggested that it should be approved by our office as it adheres to the development plan and the Planning Act, the subdivision regulations. And here's the layout, just to remind you. And there are a number of conditions that we suggested, and I'll just take those through you. I actually put them up on the screen so you can follow along in case you forgot from, I guess it's almost 8 weeks ago now. So the first condition is that the applicant owner submits confirmation in writing that they've paid applicable taxes, development levies, addressed drainage, as well as entered into a development agreement for a number of different issues that I have on the screen there, including tree preservation and pathways. Madam Mayor, on item 5 there, I was reminded by your staff that when we last met in June on this, There was a request from council. I can't remember which councillor noted it, but for a little bit more direction on the pedestrian infrastructure related to painted crosswalks, as well as some different sort of paving standards. And these are the areas that would go, I'm going to go back to the screen, that would go, trying to see, can you see my cursor at all? You can, okay. So one of them deals with this public reserve here. That would be a connection up to River Springs of the paving there. And the other ones deal with the with this public reserve, this big plot here, as well as the one at the end of the cul-de-sac at that portion where my cursor is, dealing with accessible curb accesses and the like. Condition number 2 is and number 3 are from the utilities, confirmation that from both Shaw, Manitoba Hydro, and Central Gas that easements have been entered into. Number 4 is also very similar, confirmation from Bell MTS that easements have been entered into. Number 5 is confirmation from drainage and water rights licensing from Manitoba Conservation, dealing with an engineered drainage plan. As well as number 6 is similar, that Manitoba Infrastructure wants some confirmation on drainage, the drainage plan from the applicant. Number 7 is also a condition for Manitoba Infrastructure dealing with traffic impact study and all related permits for that. Number 8 is that the existing structures on blocks 2 of lots 13 and 14 are brought into compliance. These are the properties that are south of Masters that have some existing buildings on there. They either have to be removed or replaced or relocated. And number 9 is that the zoning has to be approved for the area, which it just has. So that's all I have for this, Madam Mayor. If council has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Eno. Councillor Kleiber, any questions for Mr. Eno?
Mr. Eno, are there sidewalks throughout the subdivision on that area? I know that we asked for sidewalks for accessibility. How many sidewalks are there? Can't hear you.
Sorry, I did the Zoom mistake of talking without unmuting myself. From what I can recall, the sidewalks are run north-south in the subdivision from River Springs. I don't believe there were any sidewalks that were proposed running east-west along those roads. So where there were driveways, I believe the applicant was proposing not to have sidewalks. But some pathways, I believe they were suggesting in as an alternate that went through some of those public reserves, go north-south.
Unfortunately, those pathways aren't wheelchair accessible. Emergency exit was to be paved, apparently. Is the emergency exit paved or no? Originally, it was supposed to be when we did the phase 1.
Oh, that's the portion you're talking about that links up to River Springs. I don't know. Perhaps your CEO can recall that. If not, that can be as a condition in your development.
I can't recall what was discussed at the last meeting, but I know that we had, the council had discussed and agreed to everything that we were doing and actually went around council and we discussed the sidewalks. We discussed what was there. So when we noted it at that reading and what we included in the conditions, I would believe that's what would have came forward here, Mr. Eno. So I don't believe that we didn't add anything that was agreed upon to the conditions at that meeting.
Yeah, I think that I had asked for sidewalks throughout, but council
and that had been discussed intensively at the meeting, and actually some debate on why we wouldn't put sidewalks in some areas. And I remember Councillor Busetti coming up for a plan for some sidewalks, and it was agreed to, sidewalks would go in the area he asked for. I know that sidewalks where there's driveways cause safety issues at times. I also know we had discussion on some paving that there was an area where there were trees involved, and if we paved, it would cause a lot of damage to the trees, and it was best to keep in the natural state, and council accepted that as a reasonable answer for that. If not, you're taking in paving equipment where the trees are, and you're going to risk losing a large number of trees if you're going into a forested area with asphalt. And also, when you have asphalt in a forested area, if you have to go in and do repairs, there's chance in the future to damage trees because you have to take different type of equipment in for asphalting.
Yeah, you know what? I do remember that now about the emergency exit. But I'm going to ask council again for sidewalks because I really feel it's very important. And we did get a letter after that, I think, where we had some emails before. I can't remember exactly, but there were people that have worked with people that have accessibility issues, and they strongly wanted sidewalks in that area for accessibility. And I understand what you're saying. The developer was the one that said, oh, the sidewalks are too dangerous with the driveways. But don't we have sidewalks in the city with driveways? If we have sidewalks in the city with driveways, then surely we can have sidewalks out here with driveways.
Well, if you're still addressing me on this, that no, in most places in new developments in the city now where there's driveways, they don't have sidewalks due to the fact that it's a safety concern with people backing out of the front yards. In the I'll call it the old days when we had back lanes going in, there was always sidewalks because people were backing out of their yard into the back lane. So if you go in most new developments, you'll see sidewalks peripheral to where there's no driveways. So I know there's a couple developments we have now that they all pick to put the sidewalks in across from the street from where the driveways are. There's a number of sidewalks in this development, and a couple areas where we have driveways. It's a trail that goes in behind the homes through the trees and that. So I felt that it's not my final decision, but I thought that council had discussed this thoroughly at the last meeting. It was a while back, so that's the problem. That we had a meeting a while back on the subdivision, and some people have misplaced all the some of the things that we've discussed, and it's hard for all of us to remember what we discussed. Usually we would come back and finish off with the meeting relatively sooner. So but there was a lot of discussion around sidewalks. So wherever it was a safe area to put a sidewalk, we had, and there was some other places where they had put.
And I'll just say that there's some sidewalks where there's not, and I do know that there's lots of city sidewalks. So I'm going to implore council one more time to add some more sidewalks. If the majority doesn't want to, that's fine. I've asked for it.
Thank you, Councillor Kleiber. Councillor Link, any questions for the planner?
No, I don't have questions for the planner. I would support the idea of putting sidewalks.
Thank you. Councillor Garcetti, any questions for the planner? Any comments regarding the sidewalks?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prague, any questions for the planner?
No question.
Can I just quickly, ask for a recorded vote?
I haven't read the resolution, but yes. Right, with no further questions for the planner, I will read the resolution and put it on the table for discussion amongst council. Be it resolved that for the rural municipality of West St. Paul under section 125(1) of the Planning Act. Be it resolved that the council for the rural municipality of West St. Paul under section 125(1) of the Planning Act approves subdivision application S21-2900 for subject lands located south of River Springs Drive between Main Street and the Red River, rolls number 5472020045, 54730, 54300, and 54320, in order to create 185 lots for single-family residential development, in addition to new public roads, public reserves, and residual lots subject to the following conditions. 1, applicant owner submits confirmation in writing from the Chief Administrative Officer of the municipality that A, taxes on the land be subdivided for the current year, plus any arrears have been paid or arrangements satisfactory to council have been made. B, payment of any applicable development levies have been paid. C, a drainage plan grading has been prepared by a qualified engineer to the satisfaction of the municipality. D, a development agreement has been entered into to address the following but not limited to: restricted development of the residual lots, Block 3, Lot 8, Block 1, Lot 9, and the temporary right-of-way, Block 2, Lot 30. Ownership of these lots is not to be transferred without written approval from the RM. Intersection improvements at Masters Avenue and Main Street as deemed necessary by the RM. 3.5 meter, 11.5 feet wide pathway with bollards to connect to the end of the cul-de-sac to River Springs Drive. Tree preservation, pedestrian infrastructure, dedication of public reserve to the RM without compensation, installation and connection to municipal services, including fire hydrants, design standards, cost recovery, signage, phasing, landscaping, including fencing requirements. 2, applicant owner submits written confirmation from Shaw Cable that an easement agreement has been entered into with Shaw Cable with respect to existing and or future facilities associated with subdivision as required by the Real Property Act. Registration of this agreement will be included as a condition on the final certificate of approval. 3, applicant owner submits written confirmation from Manitoba Hydro and Centra Gas Manitoba Inc. that an easement agreement has been entered into with Manitoba Hydro and Centra Gas Manitoba Inc. with respect to existing and or future facilities associated with the subdivision and plan, and a plan of easement as required by the Real Property Act has been provided. Registration of this agreement can be included as a condition of the final certificate of approval. Contact Manitoba Hydro at the following. 4, applicant owner submits written confirmation from Bell MTS that an easement agreement has been entered into with Bell MTS with respect to existing and or future facilities associated with the subdivision, and a plan of easement as required by the Real Property Act has been provided. Registration of this agreement will be included as a condition of the final certificate of approval. Contact Bell MTS Property Acquisition Department at the following. 5, applicant owner submits confirmation from the Drainage and Water Rights Licensing Branch of Manitoba Conservation and Climate that the applicant has satisfied all requirements from that agency as detailed in their correspondence from May 12, 2021. These include, if required, approval of an engineered drainage plan, approval of hydraulic design calculations, and obtaining a water rights license. For more information, contact the following. 6, the developer provides written confirmation from Manitoba Infrastructure that either drainage is not an issue or that the applicant has adequately addressed any potential drainage issues. The applicant will have to provide our regional technical services engineer with the sufficient information to ensure drainage from this development would not adversely affect the provincial highway system. If necessary, the regional engineer may request the applicant to submit a detailed drainage plan prepared by qualified experts. Please note the cost of this study and any revisions to the highway drainage system directly associated with this proposed development will be the responsibility of the developer. 7, the developer provides written confirmation from Manitoba Infrastructure that they have received and approved a traffic impact study for this development and all future phases of the development. The traffic impact study will have to be prepared by a qualified transportation engineer. It will identify the amount and type of traffic that will be generated by the development and its potential impact on the adjacent road network. The study will identify the type of on-highway improvements that will be required to safely accommodate the traffic generated by this development, the cost of the traffic impact study, and any required on-highway improvements would be the responsibility of the developer. The applicant will have to enter into an agreement with the development for the construction of on-highway improvements. Contact person with MI concerning traffic impact study is the following. 8, that the existing structure on block 2, lots 13 and 14 are brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw. By removing the garage, a demolition permit may be required and or obtaining any necessary variances. And 9, that the related zoning bylaw amendment application number 2021-7P is approved to rezone the subject lands to RS serviced residential. That's a long one. Can I get a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Vercetti, seconded Councillor Prague, and I'll go around the table for discussion again. Councillor Link, any discussion comments regarding the subdivision?
I have only comments. I'm not satisfied that the proposed subdivision is a complementary fit for the adjoining neighborhoods, which are largely RG zoned. I've driven through a neighborhood designed by the applicants in Transcona, and I believe it is similar to what is proposed here. This neighborhood was remarkable for its small lots, which allowed no access to backyards for vehicles because they all had attached garages, preventing access to backyards. Large numbers of new and newer cars, a lot of pickup trucks, recreational vehicles of all kinds, mobile homes, storage units for four-wheel drive vehicles, skidoos and so on, were all parked in crowded driveways and streets. Some of the streets are, some of the driveways, the front yard was taken up by the cement driveways. There was basically very little room left in the front yards of many places that weren't just cement driveways. And I read in the Free Press also a newspaper article about people living in this area, and they were complaining about, the current residents were complaining about lack of sidewalks for their kids to walk when they had to catch the bus, the school bus. They were complaining about snow clearing on such narrow streets as well as other things. I'm also not satisfied with the plans for the roadways. The entrance and exit from Masters to Main is located so that a lot of cars will have to flow past the nearby playground area. And I have seen the dangerous results of such a planning situation in another residential area existing in the municipality. I've seen the hazard. I am not satisfied that adequate provision has been made for accessibility for residents with mobility issues. I could go on, but I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Link. Councillor Kleiber, any comments for discussion?
What I see here is a subdivision that's a city subdivision plunked into the country with country amenities. So we don't want to put sidewalks in. We don't want to put in things that were compatible with the city subdivision, because that's what this is. It is. It's a city subdivision. And I have to agree with Councillor Link, and I have to agree with the residents that came forward at the appeal hearing. This is not the density that is complementary to the area. There are some 36 lots that are 60 feet. Those are somewhat complementary, but the rest of them are small. And I know in the strategic plan, when we reviewed it the first time, and we were at the Winter Club, the number one thing that came back from our residents, we need to keep West St. Paul rural. And I don't think cutting up this land the way that it is keeping West St. Paul rural at all. It is making it much more of a city. And if that's what the majority of this council wants to do, I can only vote with my own conscience, and I can only vote with what the residents have empowered me with, is to represent them. And so that's what I will do.
Thank you, Councillor Kleiber. Councillor Pereg, any comments on the subdivision?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Bussetti, any comments on the subdivision?
No, thank you.
I have a few comments. Again, these are difficult decisions that council face. If this is a big subdivision of 185 lots, and these are hard choices. Unfortunately, I think our residents assume that the choice before council is to keep it rural or support high density. And in my opinion, and with the knowledge that I have regarding Bill 37 and Plan 2050, that is not an option before this council. We don't have that choice of keeping this area large open lots or subdividing. The reality is what's coming down and what's been approved as part of Bill 37 is 4.8 units an acre to 9.7. And so in considering what the province is requesting as we move forward and the lack of choice that future councils will have, the choice before this council is not vote no and keep it rural and save this area. That is not an option. And we can have differences of opinion on that. But the reality is Bill 37 has passed. The draft plan 2050 with a required density of 4.8 to 9.7 in our area is under review by the province, accepted and moving forward. If we defeat this and a future council has to look at a development proposal that comes forward of 4.8 to 9.7 units an acre, and a future council defeats it, it will go to the municipal board. If it is consistent with Plan 2050 and Bill 37, council's decision will be overturned and those lots will be approved. I would love to see consistency in the area. The reality is Rivercrest was approved in the 1940s. Those lots were 2 units an acre. Since the 1940s, many of those residents have come to past councils and subdivided their lots in Rivercrest into smaller lots. There are some 50-foot lots in Rivercrest because previous councils have approved their subdivision. They are no longer fully 2 units an acre. Lister Rapids was approved in the 1980s. Those lots are not 2 units an acre, mostly 75 feet, and they are smaller than Rivercrest. River Springs Drive in the 1990s was smaller again. And now the new area of River Springs Drive is about a 3.2 density. So I absolutely hear residents' concerns about not having high density in this area. And I believe with all my heart that a no vote is not going to help them accomplish that. We're actually going to seal our fate and have high density here to a level we've never experienced in West St. Paul before. And I fully believe that with the bills that have been passed. Many things are taken into consideration again in this decision, the legal requirements, the development plan, the secondary plan. We've been assured by our planner, we've been assured by legal that that process has been followed. We have an order from the Red River Planning Board on the zoning supporting that. And we've received many correspondence from residents. Some of those 200 letters are residents submitting 10 times. And I welcome that. We want to see public engagement. We want to hear their input. I haven't heard tonight, a lot about their input and what we heard. I heard they don't want multifamily. Thanks to Councillor Bussetti and moving that motion forward and 3 of us supporting that, there is no multifamily. Their concerns have been heard. They said as part of our strategic plan, we want more green space. This area was previously private property, not accessible to residents. It will add 14% park land for all residents to enjoy, where they previously could not enjoy that land. There will be trees saved, which has been a major issue for residents. The developer stressed that 79% of the old oak trees would be saved. How fantastic is that when they could be mowed down? That's what this council helped push for and accomplish. The Trails Committee wants to see more paths and connected neighborhoods. They've been pushing for that for over 10 years. We're going to see an additional 2 kilometers of trail space at an expense to the developer, not our residents of West St. Paul. They don't want to see all small lots, all 44-foot lots. The developer has over 60% that are 50 feet and over. So they've talked about that. Our plan is to make sure, and residents have called and asked me to make sure that they could have housing they could afford. You can't have smaller lots than 44 feet and have a variety to have affordability. Residents of River Springs Drive have talked about traffic safety. How do they get onto number 9 highway with the growth in the region in Selkirk? How do they get on there safely? Where would the lights go? This developer will be paying for lights at a cost completely to them that residents of River Springs Drive can access. They've said our long street is unsafe. They have now speed humps to help protect them. They've said we never had emergency exit previously. They're going to have 3 access points onto their street, including the main access to lights. They've said road safety is important. The developer curved the road so they can't speed straight from River Springs Drive to Masters and kill children while they're rushing. They will slow down from the road and the curve in the road. We've heard 1 or 2 comments from residents about accessibility and sidewalks in a rural municipality. This developer's adding sidewalks throughout their development. They're maintaining the tree space. We've heard people want more playgrounds for their children, and they're adding 2 playgrounds. We have listened to the residents. The option of keeping it rural is not an option in this area. This has been designated settlement center and has been a settlement center for over 100 years in West St. Paul. What it is designated for is to have possibly mixed use of commercial, high density housing and apartments and townhouses. We have heard the residents and said, we're not putting that there. It's strictly single family homes. We have heard residents. I don't believe it would be a service for me to be voting against this and playing Russian roulette to see what happens in terms of density in the future. We know it'll be 4.8 to 9.7, and that's not a risk I'm prepared to take. We've all had an opportunity to speak. I'm not going to engage in debate. We've all had our opportunity. I'm not going to debate back and forth, Councillor Link, or Councillor Kleiber, I apologize. We have a mover and a seconder. We have a request for a recorded vote, and I will call for the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Go ahead, Councillor Kleiber. And that is carried. Thank you.
I was just going to say, Plan 2050 there's no transition.
We're not going to get into a debate, Councillor Kleiber. We've all shared information. Thank you. I will read the resolution to adjourn the meeting. Be it resolved that this meeting stand adjourned. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Perag, seconded Councillor Bersetti. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eno, for being available today to answer our questions. Thank you. And we'll see council at the planning meeting.